Let me talk to y'all for a minute, man. I turned this podcast rap show to a business. Refugee been hustling for years since I got admitted. Man, I got admitted, I was broke, then I fucking did it. In the streets fitted, man, no kidding. Catch me with a sweatsuit, man, cold chillin'.
What's good, people? ESTEDON here. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Check. What's good, people? ESTEDON here with the Hustle Holdings podcast. I know we've changed the name and we've changed the mission a little bit. I decided that hustle was a little too broad. There was a lot of things I was trying to cover with hustle, with the Hustle podcast, with the Hustle brand. You know, it was music, it was clothing, it was all these things, and I had big ambitions, but I realized that it's probably better if I just focus in on something that I think I'm good at, that I'm interested in, and that I want to go in deep into. And it doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing music. You guys see I still do music and stuff, but as far as this podcast goes, it's going to be very focused on investing. And we had changed the name to Hustle Investments or Hustle Investing Podcast to inspire and empower people to invest. We were doing that, but I realized that I could even simplify that even further. So the mission of the business for Hustle Holdings is to improve the life of ourselves and the people around us by sharing investment information, bringing returns to investors, and giving. That's pretty much it. So the podcast is to share investing information. And obviously I will be advertising my investment company as I build it and open it up to investors to eventually start raising capital and manage people's money. But for now, I'm just going to be sharing information. Hopefully, it's not necessarily advice. This isn't tailored advice. I don't think there's probably rules and regulations around offering tailored advice to people online. But, it is what it is. So you can take it as tailored advice or not, but it is what it is. So I'm going to be sharing investment information on this podcast. And if you like it, then great. If you don't, that's okay. And, you don't have to believe me. You probably look at me like, who's this young punk who went from the hip hop world into the investing world? Who does he think he is? And I should preface it by saying that, my trading portfolio personally my investment portfolio hasn't done all that well. I tracked the records. You guys heard me in the last podcast tell you guys my results. And my personal trading portfolio investment portfolio hasn't done so well. But the people that I've advised, specifically my ex, my good friend, used to be partners. We used to be in a relationship together. We're kind of friends now. And I've been advising him on his portfolio over the past year and a half. And his portfolio is up. For the most part, it's up. And that gave me the confidence to say that, okay, I can actually offer advice to people that's useful, And I did a similar thing with my mother. I advised her to buy some precious metals. I had gifted her some precious metals, and those precious metals are doing pretty well. And I'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, just know that, you don't have to believe me, but, if anybody who followed my Instagram, you can check out my Instagram at ESTEDON, ESTEDON__. Anybody who followed the stuff that I was posting on my Instagram stories and saw the things I was posting and invested in some of the things that the people that I was reposting had advised to invest in, they would have done pretty well. And and then I was able to implement some of those strategies into my ex-partner's portfolio. And so I realized, okay, I think I have some information here that's valuable and useful, and I think I can build something from this. So you don't have to believe me, you don't have to listen to me, it's fine. But if you do decide to listen to me, then hopefully I can provide some value to you in your portfolio. So with that being said, I wanted to kind of structure this podcast a little bit differently than I usually have. So before I would just kind of go into a main lesson and dive deep into it, but I kind of want to break this down into kind of do it into a bit of a show. So for the first half, or for the first part of the podcast, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to talk about some of the events that were happening in the world. Then I'm going to go into what I've learned. And then I'm going to go into a lesson that I want to impart that I've learned that I think could be useful. And that's kind of how I want to structure the show, the podcast. And so maybe I'll do some transitions and all this stuff, but regardless of how I end up editing it, that's kind of how I want to do it. And then I also want to share with you guys a portfolio that I want to construct that's going to be a paper portfolio. So there's this platform called Moomoo. Thank you to Ian for giving me that information. There's a paper trading portfolio platform that allows me to make paper trades. So they're not real money. It's not real money. It's fake money. But it allows me to buy securities, US and Canadian securities, as if I was buying them in real life. And it gives me a fake amount of money that I can play with $1 million. And so I'm going to use that money and I'm going to build a portfolio that I want to show you guys the updates to every week. And I'm going to say, hey, this is where I'm going to put my $1 million of cash into. And then I want you guys to track it over time. And you can see based off that portfolio whether I have given you good advice or not. And whether the portfolio that I've constructed is good or not. And I figured this is a fun, not serious, and not a personal way for me to do this investing stuff without giving away a lot of my personal information, you know? Because I could give you guys updates on my portfolio and stuff and all this stuff, but I don't think I want to sit here and give you guys up-to-date things that are in my portfolio, you know what I mean? Not at this point. And so I figured this is a better way for me to share that hypothetical portfolio, and you guys can track the performance of it over time. And I will be showing that in the show. So with that being said, we'll start with the events that happened over the past few weeks. We have the Elon spat with Trump. I know this is kind of old news at this point, but hey, I'll bring it up because I did make a trade based off this spat. Elon went on Twitter, X, his company, and bashed the Big Beautiful Bill. For those who don't know, the Big Beautiful Bill offered a lot of tax cuts for workers, and it was going to increase the deficit for the United States budget for the year. I think it was going to add $3 trillion to the budget. I don't know if it was for the year overall or for however many years. And Elon was upset because this whole purpose of getting on to the Doge and forming Doge was to cut government spending and reduce the deficit. And clearly this big beautiful bill was going to increase the deficit, and Elon was pissed about that, and he decided he moved away from politics and wanted to voice his concerns about these things. And then him and Trump went back and forth. And I'll say one thing about this. My mom told me this because I come from Colombia. You can see the flag. And my mom told me something that was so key. It was so funny. She's like, man, the moment you get into politics, that's the moment they want to cut off your head. Look at Trump. They try to kill him. Look at Elon. They try to take down his company. Something about politics is so divisive, especially as a businessman. You know what I mean? And my mom gave me this perfect example of Pablo Escobar from where I'm from. Pablo was making tons of money in the cocaine trade. And it wasn't until he decided to step into politics that they wanted to take him down. And so that's a message and a lesson for anyone in business that wants to get into politics. Think twice before you do that, because it could end up fucking up your business. And you saw what happened with Tesla sales and all this sort of stuff. And so this public spat caused the shares of Tesla to dip 15%. Close to the end of the trading day that day. And I saw an update on my Instagram. It was like, Tesla shares are down 15%. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy that. You know what I mean? So I made a little trade. I didn't put a lot, just a couple $10, nothing too crazy. And obviously they shot back up the next day. Still, Tesla shares are still down from its all-time high of whatever it was at the time during the Trump pump back in November, December. So Tesla's shares are still down. And I'm not going to tell you whether I have, I will tell you, I'm not going to say whether I have positions in Tesla or not at this point, but I will tell you that, consider it as an idea. The ship has not, I don't think it's fully sailed yet, but I'll get into that. So then we had the shares shoot back up, and then over the week, the shares kind of moved sideways. And but we knew that the Robotaxi announcement was supposed to come out on Sunday. Robotaxi announcement comes out. They launch the Robotaxi in Austin, and they do all this test run with these few people doing these Robotaxis, $4 per trip. And on Monday, the shares shoot up 10%, as high as 10%. They kind of consolidated back to around 8% towards the end of the trading day. And if you would have bought that dip, that 15% dip, you would have been up already 25% at this point within a week and a half. And so that's the advantages of taking advantage of dips when these things happen. You know what I mean? And so that happened. And, if you had your money, put it into Tesla, you would have made some decent money. I think it still has a ways to go. We'll see what happens tomorrow morning. I'm recording this on June 23rd, 11:59 p.m. So you can time stamp this tomorrow morning. We'll see where the shares are. So that happened. Then you had the Iran-Israel war. So Iran-Israel back and forth. Iran's been backing Houthis and all these people to attack Israel. I'm not a political guy. I don't want to get too political into this stuff. I just want to talk about the effects on the market. So that happened. The market was a little timid during the week when the Israel-Iran war started taking off. And then Trump was kind of in this situation where he was thinking about getting involved or not. We didn't know. And then over the weekend, they dropped bombs on nuclear sites. And it was like, holy fuck. You know what I mean? Like crazy. Holy shit. I think it was either over the weekend. I think it was on Friday. I don't remember what day it was. And so then things kind of got choppy. Things got a little concerning. Bitcoin tanked on that news. I think it went down like 5-10%. Oil shot up. So anybody holding oil short would have got fucked. If you would have sold during that time, and anybody that went long on oil, you would have done pretty well. And then all of a sudden today, Monday, June 23rd, Trump announces that there's a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And Bitcoin chews up 5% on that news, right? And I told my partner at the time, I said it was around 135, 136. I said, now is a pretty decent time to buy some Bitcoin. I expect this thing to go back up. And I haven't checked what it's at right now, but let's check where it's at right now. I haven't checked what it's at, but last time I said it was around 144,000 Canadian. And so if you would have bought Bitcoin during that time, you would have done pretty well as well. And I expect markets tomorrow morning to go back up. I expect markets to go up tomorrow morning based off this news of the ceasefire. I know Trump wants to pump the stock market, and he sees that as his report card. So, we'll see what happens, but I expect markets to rally tomorrow morning. So if you would have bought over the past week, bought some of these dips, I think you'll do okay. And then you had gold not really doing much. Gold really didn't move much over the week, over this news, which is weird because it shot up on the initial news of the war, but then it kind of moved sideways. I think it's only up. I have the stats here, but I think it's really only up. Like gold is only up 1% over the past 30 days. You know what I mean? It's really not moving much. Really, the story over the past 30 days has been silver. Silver's been shooting up. The options and the futures contracts have been going crazy on a lot of these silver mining companies and on silver itself. And silver's been shooting up. It shot up 8% within 30 days. And so, and people were talking about this. It was the punchline, the punchline of all silver is undervalued. And it's like the irony is the fact that at some point this thing was going to go back up. Because it was just like the punchline that nobody believed in until it happens, And so I'm bullish on silver. I think silver will go up. First Majestic, another company to look out for. A lot of these, I think Pan American Silver has already shot up pretty much a lot. But, First Majestic, just kind of keep your eye out on that one. Silver, I'm bullish on silver. Gold, I'm still bullish on, even though it's not moving a lot. I expect it maybe to even drop overnight. And tomorrow morning over this news, it could go up, it could go down, I don't know. But I'm bullish on silver and gold. And then you had this U.S. Fed rate holding the rates instead of cutting. We kind of expected that. There's a lot of things to go into Fed rates, whether they should raise or cut. Trump wants him to cut, Powell to cut. But I don't think Powell wants to cut right now. A lot of uncertainty. And there's a lot of, that's a whole topic in itself. But let's just say the Fed rate was held steady. Markets were kind of down during that time. Not much happened on that news other than markets moving down a little bit. It wasn't a great week for markets last week. And especially U.S. markets. And then you have future news. So you have Canada, U.S., because I'm Canada, you have Canada-U.S. tariff response on June or July 22nd. That's the date for Carney to give his response on the tariffs of the U.S. aluminum and steel and other tariffs. And I think they said they're supposed to reach some sort of a trade agreement within 30 days. I expect tariff to do the taco. Trump always chickens out, which is just him negotiating, punching you in the face and then saying, hey, I'm sorry, let's work out a deal. And so I expect at some point those tariffs to be rolled back. Maybe, maybe not, but I think they will. And markets to rally on that news as well. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking could happen. It's a possibility. And then you have Tesla earnings reported on July 22nd as well. That's I don't expect good earnings from Tesla because of this past quarter. Things weren't great because of Elon and political involvement, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Tesla could go down on that news, but in the meantime, I think it maybe could go up. And that's pretty much the news for the week. So, boom. Then you have what I learned. So I've been doing the CSC course. I've been reading books. I listen to tons of podcasts. If you follow my Instagram, the Hustle Holdings podcast, the Hustle Holdings page on Instagram, I post a lot of the podcasts and the content that I'm consuming and listening and to on there. And so make sure you follow the Instagram. And I was learning about options. I was learning about bonds, specifically convertible bonds through the CSC course. I just started learning about margin accounts, long margins, long margining, short margining, common and preferred shares. And I realized that a lot of the stuff that I start learning about becomes real to me in real life. And I could go into the nitty gritty of some of this stuff. So I'll give you guys some definitions of what options are, bonds, convertible bonds, margin accounts, common and preferred shares. So you guys can learn some things, get some useful information out of this. And so you have options. Options are a promise to buy or sell, specifically puts and calls are a promise to buy or sell securities at a future date at a certain price. And then I learned about bonds, convertible bonds. So a bond is basically a debt instrument, a promise to pay, and bonds, convertible bonds, can be backed by an asset, or it can be backed by the credit of the issuer. And basically it allows for somebody to have a debt instrument that pays fixed income with the option to convert into equity. And there's a bunch of different provisions around that. There's a conversion price and a forced conversion, all that sort of stuff that forces somebody to turn their debt instrument into equity. And so I learned about that. And the reason why somebody would want to do that, a company, it allows them to issue debt. And then I learned about margin accounts, buying with leverage, going long in a leveraged position on a margin account, which basically allows for somebody to buy an asset with a certain amount down, and borrow shares and then pay back, give back the shares and split or keep the difference. And then you have shorting in a margin account. So borrowing, selling it. If it goes down, buying it, giving back the shares, and then keeping the difference. And doing that with a short amount of capital down. And some of the capital requirements for that. And then I learned about common and preferred shares. So common shares give you access to the equity of a company. It basically represents equity in a company. It represents ownership of a company. It's lower in the capital stack than bonds and debt instruments and creditors. It's probably one of the lowest on the capital stack. And then you have preferred shares, which are above the common shares, which is basically a debt instrument, security that companies can issue that is not a bond, but allows for a company to pay out dividends. And And so you have common shares and preferred shares. And then I was learning about all this stuff and be like, okay, make sense of this all for me. Like, why would somebody want to do this? What's the whole point of learning this stuff? What I learned is that you have a company like MicroStrategy using these securities and these debt instruments, these common shares, these preferred shares, these capital, these securities to build a company, raise capital, and buy Bitcoin. And so now you have a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies that are issuing common shares, preferred shares, and convertible bonds to raise capital to buy a commodity like Bitcoin. And it's like, oh shit, like that's a way to use this stuff, And so I would keep an eye out for a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies to start doing this sort of stuff. I think it's genius. I think it's very smart. And just learning about this stuff and seeing the real life applications of this stuff. You know what I mean? And so, I could go very deep on these topics, options, margin accounts, common and preferred shares, all this sort of stuff. But I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what I was learning and how that connected with what's going on right now in the world. And then the lesson for the day is don't let short term get in the way of the long term. What do I mean by that? Basically, I've been in situations where I was like, man, I have to get this fucking budget. I'm on this budget. I'm going to reach this goal. I have this time frame, yada, yada. Short-term goals, short-term budgets, daily goals, daily budgets. And I realized that sometimes you can let all these things get in the way of the long-term picture. You don't want to let the short-term goals get in the way of the long-term picture. And when I came to this realization is because, or why I came to this realization is because I remember back in the day, I had this goal. I wanted $5,000 in my bank account. And I was like, I want $5,000 in my bank account. And then I had some like gold and silver and some securities and all this sort of stuff. And I sold them to get this $5,000 to reach this arbitrary goal. And not realizing that gold would continue to rise. And I mean, I knew it was going to continue to rise, but I just didn't follow through with that. And that was a perfect example of not letting the long term dictate the short term. And I let the short term dictate the long term.
Let me talk to y'all for a minute. Man, I turned this podcast rap show to a business. Refugee been hustling for years since I got admitted. Man, I got admitted, I was broke, then I fucking did it. In the streets fitted, man, no kidding. Catch me with a sweatsuit, man, cold chillin'.